The tall, slender man who leaned back casually in the cracked black vivid office chair had a manner of someone presiding over an executive boardroom. In fact, the man presided over nothing but a cheap wool veneer top desk in a closet-sized windowless office. An even cheaper Ardelic nameplate at the front of the desk announced that the man's name was Steve Raglan. Under Steve Raglan, the nameplate revealed that the man was a career counselor. Giving Ragnar's smug expression that clearly telepathed his inflated self-opinion, Mike was sure the one who he Mike sure was the guy thought he was the best career counselor on the planet, or maybe just the best person on the planet. Mike really, really wanted to punch the guy. 50-ish with grayish dark hair, Ragnar studied Mike with narrow eyes, magnified and contorted by thick, round, black-rimmed glasses. The eyewear dominating a finest face topped by a high forehead. Raglan flashed Mike a grin. The grin was toothy and looked more like a grimace than a smile. "So, Mr. Smith," Ragnar said, "what's your deal?" Ragnar's gaze ran up and down the length of Mike as if Ragnar was sizing up a cow before its trip to the slaughterhouse. Ragnar continued to recline on his chair. One of his large feet was propped against the ugly, scared desk. The foot waggled as if Ragnar was keeping time with a tune that only he could hear. "Well, Mike?" Ragnar said. "Mind if I call you Mike?" Mike shrugged. He didn't care what this guy called him. He didn't care what the guy had to say either. Anything Ragnar said would be annoying. The man had a gritted voice, alternately rappy and nasally, then smooth and sing-song. It was as if Ragnar couldn't figure out who he was or what he wanted to sound like. But whatever. Mike didn't really care about why Ragnar sounded the way he did. All Mike wanted to do was to get this meeting over with. "So what are you, Mike?" Ragnar asked. "Some kind of head case?" Ragnar used his wagging foot to push off the desk. He straightened his chair and leaned forward, propping his elbow on the beige front panel that held the single million file folder and red coffee mug, which appeared to be empty. The folder was the only one of Ragnar's desk. Other than an old landline phone and an empty metal touch inbox, the desk looked like it was never needed for any actual work. "Dr. Chelly and Mr. I like to beat up the dads," Ragnar said. "Is that who you are?" Mike stared at Ragnar. Not only was the man saying nothing he had expected to hear, there was something off about him. Mike's nose twitched. Maybe it was the guy's odor. Mike couldn't place it. It wasn't sweat or anything like that. It wasn't cologne or food. It was something musky. Something that made Mike think of the damn basement of his childhood home. He never liked going down there in that basement. He didn't like Ragnar either. Ragnar didn't seem to care what Mike remained mute. "You attacked a man in the broad daylight," Ragnar said. Mike's inner eye replied to fire the food court fountain. He felt the cold water, tasted the clobbering blood. Mike licked his lips and stayed silent. In front of his own child. Ragnar went on. Mike's memory took him back to the fountain again. He remembered the pressure of Jeremiah's arm around his shoulder. "Mike!" Jeremiah had to shout in Mike's ear. "Come on, Mike!" Mike had fought against Jeremiah as his gangs would search for the little boy he just rescued. Then Mike had heard the boy scream, "Daddy!" Still holding his penguin, the boy had scrambled into the fountain to reach the man Mike was attacking. That's when Mike had finally let Jeremiah pull him away. "One has to wonder," Ragnar said, tearing Mike from the shameful memory. "What would possess a person to act that way you did?" Mike looked down at his hands, which was twisted together against his curly stomach. "It was a misunderstanding," Mike said softly. "I thought that, yes." Ragnar interrupted as he opened the folder in front of him. "There's a note here." He tapped at the top page of the file. "Given your unique history, I understand how you could have made a mistake. But that's not the whole story of Michael Smith, is it?" Ragnar flipped through the few pages of Mike's file. He paused and cleared his throat. Taping a page, he read, "Tire Zone Sales Associate, 2 months, employment termination for cause, insubordination. Media World, custodial staff, 1 week, fired because of a..." Ragnar leaned over the page and read even more. Slowly. "Gradually unpleasant disposition?" Ragnar looked up. "Coffee?" "What?" Mike asked. The non-sequitur caught him off guard. "Would you like some coffee?" Ragnar asked. Mike couldn't process the request. How could they gone from walk down the memory lane of his failures to a friendly offer of coffee? All Mike could do was stare at Ragnar. Ragnar shrugged and pushed out his chair. He grabbed the red mug and took 2 steps in the coffee maker that sat on top of the gray filling cabinet in the corner of the office. Mike couldn't notice the coffee maker. He hadn't noticed the aroma of the coffee. Either he's been too distracted by the arrested order that seemed to maintain from Ragnar. Mike shifted his chair to look at Ragnar's shoes. Had that man stepped into something that was causing the stench? Mike couldn't tell. Ragnar swore scuffled brown loafers. They didn't appear to be stained. Ragnar poured his coffee and Mike finally caught the nutty scent of the brew. Ragnar tore open a packet of sugar and added it into the mug. He didn't bother to stir it. Instead, he turned and looked back at Mike. I'll be honest with you, Mike, Ragnar said. Given your track record, your options are extremely limited. Mike made a face. Time to grovel. I'll take anything, Mike said. Any job you have. Even so, Ragnar said. He lifted his mug and took a sip of his coffee. He smiled and closed his eyes briefly, as if savoring the flavor. Mike resisted the urge to squirm with impatience. He watched Ragnar a bit back to his desk chair. Let's say I put you up for let's say a dishwashing job. Ragnar said. Next thing, I'm getting a phone call telling me that you tried to drown the fry cook in the sink with all the dirty dishes. Ragnar set down his mug and taped in his index finger. The dull, clunking sound made Mike realize it was oddly quiet in Ragnar's office, even though the offices were occupied by other social workers and the people who needed help. The nearby conversation sounded like more than a wishy shore roar, like a distant crash of an ocean wave. Ragnar leaned forward and nailed Mike with a look so severe that Mike was tempted to lean away. Ragnar's superior, jovial air seemed to morph into something else, something almost threatening. That would be very bad for me, Mike, Ragnar said. Very bad, not to mention the poor fry cook. Ragnar leaned back and cornered the mouth twitching slightly, jovially returned. He's screwing with me, Mike thought. But what could Mike do about it? Nothing. All he could do was return to groveling. I'm not a violent person, Mike said. I'm sure you're not, Ragnar said. The words were dripping in sarcasm. Ragnar's mouth quirked. Mike clenched his fist. He was seconds away from proving his last statement to be a lie. This man seriously needed to have a humbling expression beaten on his face. I can tell this is hard for you, Mike, Ragnar said. Mike saw the twilight in Ragnar's eyes. The guy was serious and enjoying baiting Mike. Being here, Ragnar continued. You don't like it, do you? Mike didn't bother to respond. You strike me, Ragnar on, as someone who'd rather, dig their own eye out with a spoon than ask for help. Mike stood up. You know what? Forget this. Mike started to turn away from Ragnar's desk. I think I have something for you, Ragnar said. Mike rotated his head towards Ragnar, but he remained standing. Come on, Ragnar said. I like to make jokes. A little levity lightens the mood. Why don't you sit down? Mike crossed his arms and looked down at the idiot behind the taggy desk. You think you have something? Mike asked. Ragnar tilted back to his chair. It's a security gig, he said. Full disclosure, it's not great. High turnover is what we in the business call it, but you get to be in your own boss, sort of. And you really don't have to worry about one thing. Mike waited. He suspected Ragnar was still toying with him. All you have to do is keep the place tidy, Ragnar finally said, and keep people out. That's 2 things, Mike said. A muscle twitched in the corner of the right side of his jaw briefly. That's what it feels like to be messed with, Mike thought. Deal with it. Are you interested? Ragnar asked. Mike shifted his feet. He intentionally allowed himself to feel a little intimidation. How's the pay? Ragnar snorted. What do you think? Not good, and the hours are worse. Mike's anticipation dissolved in disappointment. Bad hours means night. I can't do nights. Ragnar cocked his head. I'm sorry? I can't do nights, Mike repeated. Ragnar picked up his mug and took a long, noisy slurp of coffee. Mike inhaled the smell of the coffee beans, but wrinkled his nose when he once again caught the strange stench of wafted from Ragnar himself. Why can't you do nights? Ragnar asked. Mike wasn't about to try to explain his situation to Ragnar. It wasn't the man's business. It was personal. So Mike said nothing. Silence grew into a convinced presence that felt like a third person had stepped into the office. Ragnar attempted to stare down Mike. Mike had the man's gaze and didn't move a muscle. Ragnar finally gave in. Shame, he said. Ragnar reached out and pulled out the desk drawer in front of his lean stomach. He rumbled up the drawer. Mike heard a clatter, a rustle, and a metallic dunk. Finally, Ragnar plucked out a business card. He held it over his desk. In case you have a change of heart, he said. Mike didn't want to take the card. All he wanted to do was get out of here. but he wasn't in position to burn bridges. He took the car and then he stomped out Ragno's office. After Mike had left Ragno's office, he'd gone to his own job hunt. Who needed Ragno? Mike could find his own job. Or maybe not. By the time he gave up and headed towards home, the oppression gray clouds were being consumed by the night that seemed to be a big hurry to take over. Even through the day still held on some light, the sun was nowhere to be seen. Just as well, Mike wasn't in the mood for sun. As Mike turned the corner on the street, an old simulant backfired. A clerk, and Mike had to stump the gas to keep the car from stalling out. Man, he hated this car. An amalgamation of old parts from the junkyard. Mike's car might have been the ugliest vehicle on the road. If he hadn't been so grateful to have something, anything, with wheels or an engine, he would have been embarrassed to be seen in the thing. But then again, Mike wasn't really that easily embarrassed. When you carried around the kind of regret that he held everywhere he went, the usual things that embarrass people don't make a dent. Take the neighborhood Mike lived in, for instance. The Bareg street of little more than shacks that was considered to be that part of town. Originally built as makeshift housing for the dirt-poor immigrants brought into the work in the town's factories. The painted house hasn't been much that had been put up. Now there were even less. All the houses in the streets were essentially identical, give or take the variety of faded colors and the variety of old cars. Lawn equipments, toys, and other junks piled around them. Mike and Abby's house was yellow, but at least it was used to be. It was more tan than yellow now, because it was so dirty. The shallow roof, originally black, was fuzzy with green moss. Like many of the houses on the street, Mike's place had no front lawn. All it had was a collective of weeds and the ever-widening oil stain that Mike's car added to every day. Mike turned into his so-called driveway, a dirt and gravel expanse that had laid sad soil stain. He turned off his car, and the engine coughed several times before expiring for the night. As soon as the engine went silent, Mike pulled a key from the ignition, but he didn't move. Sometimes Mike got stuck in the moment. He couldn't convince himself to moving on to the next thing was worth his trouble. It wasn't that Mike was suicidal or anything. He wasn't ready to meet his maker. He wasn't remotely ready for that accounting. But Mike often wished life came with timeouts, or maybe freeze frames. It would have been helpful to have a remote so he could stop time and catch his breath. Nearby, the engine revved, the sound kicking start Mike again. He opened his car door, got out, and looped to his front porch, if you can call it that. Only a 3-foot square rise of concrete under the mist overlaying head to the bed, peeling dirty white paint. A red sheet of paper was taped to the door. Mike grabbed the rusting doorknob with his right hand. With his left hand, he tore the paper off the door. He knew he didn't need to look at it, but he did anyway. It was like goggling on a car wreck, something it was impossible to turn away from foulness. The paper said exactly what Mike expected to see. Notice of delinquency. Tell me something I don't know, Mike muttered as he stuffed the paper in the pocket as he wrinkled back slacks and opened his front door. Maxine had heard Mike's car pull up in the front of the house. How could she not? The beating needed a muffler, among 100 other things. When the engine thunderous squirt had gone silent, Maxine had waited to hear the car door slam. When it didn't, she knew that Mike's day had gotten well. If only Maxine could comfort him. Maxine snorted and turned up the sound of Mike's TV. The TV was an old analog set, one with truly crap reception. Continuous wriggles and static worn across the screen, no matter what channel you were on. Maxine's current was watching QVA. She liked QVC. She was watching QVC. She liked QVC. When Mike had teased Maxine about her addiction to the shopping channel, she pretended that his words hadn't bothered her at all. Maxine was good at pretending. Nonchalancy was her go-to defense mechanism. When you wore a broad expression, moved lungily, and kept your words few and as pathetic as possible, no one knew what you were actually thinking or feeling. It made for a good armor. Maxine could never be hurt because she pretended that she was hurt-proof, or at least that's what she told herself. Maxine finally heard Mike's car door slam as her favorite hostess introduced the next product, a silver ring with an emerald-cut cubic enzonic stone. The ring was one of the line of affordable jewelry designed by other women by the screen, an actress who probably now made more money selling rings and bracelets and necklaces than she ever earned from her B-movie roles. Both the hostess and the ex-actress had big hair and fake tans, but Maxine didn't mind that. The superficial fakery was part of QVC's appeal for Maxine. She enjoyed watching others put on the same kind of don't look at me show that she did. Not every guy can afford a real diamond, the hostess said, so it's awesome that you create this line of cubic ironic engagement rings. Isn't it? The ex-actress responded ever so humbly. This particular ring is one of my favorites. Even though Maxine watched QVC obsessively, she didn't like all that much of what the channel halted. The ring on the screen, for instance, was godly and extreme, and its price tag was lungily high. At only $79.99, the host said, the ring is a bargain. It's worth less than a wad of tinfoil, Maxine told the hostess on the screen. Mike came through the front door, and Maxine quickly affected the bored I don't give a crap about anything posture. Already reclining, she let her lids fall half closed, and she made sure her feet were dropping over the edge of the sofa's sagging mustard yellow cushion. She quickly arranged the black shirt she wore with faded jeans so it reveals just the right amount of cleavage. In her mind's eyes, Maxine assessed the picture she made. A slender 5'5", Maxine was petty enough to look a lot more feminine and helpless than she was. Sometimes the annoyed her, but sometimes she likes to make it work for her. With large, wide, spaced eyes and high cheekbones, Maxine knew she was attractive enough. She had long black hair with a thick and shiny. Guys went for that, or at least most guys did. The one guy that Maxine caught it by stepping in the shadily stamped living room, Maxine gave him a limp wave. Not a care in the world, doesn't matter at all that you don't see me. Maxine had given a lot of thought of why Mike was immune to his charms. Ha, charms, but hey, Maxine wasn't ugly, and she was only a few years younger than Mike. She wasn't dumb or obnoxious or anything. In fact, she was smarter than Mike. She was taking social science class at a community college, and sometimes she even read a book for fun in between marathon sessions of QVE watching. Hey, Max, Mike said. Maxine tried to ignore the way her shoulders tightened when Mike used her nickname. She'd been trying to wean people off that name for years. She didn't want to be Max. She wanted to be Maxine. Not tomboy trailer trash, sympathetic woman, but Maxine wasn't catching on. To everyone but her, Maxine was Max. There's scuffers, Maxine told Mike. Should still be warm if you're hungry. Mike dropped on the red village seat on one of the crumb chairs next to the small tan formaldehyde-covered kitchen table. He looked forward to the small gas stove stubbed between the old squirt fridge and a notches pit of counter that surrounded a dingy white parquet sting. Maxine had left half the microwave lasagna in the plastic pan on top of the stove. Did Abby eat? Mike asked. Maxine shrugged her legs off the sofa and raised an eyebrow at Mike. What do you think? Mike gave Maxine the half grin. Something about that grin got past Maxine's normal defenses. Her gaze landed on the ugly ring on the TV, and then she sighed. Before she could think of what she was saying, she buttered, I wish someone would buy me that ring. Mike said nothing. Immediately muttering her lip, Max stood up, switched off the TV, and picked up her jacket and old black leather backpack from the end of the sofa, keeping her face turned away from Mike. Maxine said, Abby's been in her room all evening. She's yakking away with those friends of hers. Maxine glanced at Mike in time to see him frown. She hurriedly went on. She's getting really good, by the way, at drawing. Mike grunted as he pulled a crumpled piece of red paper from his pocket. Maxine knew what that was. She was surprised he was reading it. Maxine crossed a few feet from the sofa to the kitchen table. She paused behind Mike and looked down at him. She liked being this close to him. He smelled really good. Not sweet like cologne or anything. He smelled like a man. Just clean and simple. You should get a dog, Maxine said. A big, mean one. Chain him outside. Mike looked up. The skin crumbled between his brows. Huh? Maxine pointed at the delinquent notice. We used to get those, too, she said. Then we got Bonesy proof. No more notices. The frowns between Mike's brows, but otherwise the expression didn't change. I'll keep that in mind, he said. Maxine shrugged. Miss Who Cares? She headed towards the front door. Just before she reached the doorknob, she stopped and spun back to look at Mike. I almost forgot, she said. Your aunt called. Mike made a snoring sound. Something about lawyers and you be there tomorrow or else, Mike went on. Mike dropped his head in his hands. Mike stared at his long fingers and thick hair between them. Her hand twitched, wanting so much to reach out, and Maxie got a grip of herself. She turned back towards the door. Well, see ya, she said. She opened it and stepped outside. She tried not to let her bother her that Mike didn't say goodbye.